Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'd like to thank all of you who've liked and subscribed to my last video. As I explained before, I will now be discussing a brief summary on Shattered Reflection, the sequel to my fanfic Sparked. To those of you who were able to follow along with my rather complicated explanation of the family tree, I hope the edge of your seat is extra cushioned, as Shattered Reflection involves a lot more flashbacks. Just to make things easier, I'll explain those flashbacks first, so that I don't have to keep hopping back and forth between the past and the present. These flashbacks mostly involve Konaka's past, along with her relationships with the Origami sisters, the presidents of the five traditions, Minato, and Kagari, Konaka's older sister. About 23 years ago, before Sparked and Shattered Reflection began, Konaka became a Toji and received her first okatana, Karasuza, which means corvus in Japanese. Throughout Konaka's journey as a Toji, she becomes close to her sister's friends, even developing a crush on Minato. However, Konaka was never able to fit in among other Tojis because she was born half Aradama. And the reason why this is because her mother was an Aradama princess, Tsukuyomi Hime. Unlike most Aradama princesses in the past, Tsukuyomi Hime actually wanted to coexist with humans, hence why she married Yuto, Kagari and Konaka's father. However, things ultimately changed for her for the Hiragi family due to this woman, Nariko, the head of the Origami family, and Yukari and Akane's mother. Remember, this happened before the great disaster of Sagami Bay, and before Yukari came into power. Nariko was power-hungry and ruthless in persecuting anything and anyone she saw as a threat, and she distrusted Tsukuyomi Hime most of all. This gave way to Nariko eventually sealing Tsukuyomi Hime away into an Aradama sealing casket, known as the Shinigami casket. Remember that. That will be important later on. Konaka was livid. The only reason why she bothered interacting nicely with these godforsaken humans was that she and her mother could live in peace. And of course, Nariko had to bloody ruin everything. This is only one of the factors as to what sparked Konaka's descent into darkness. The main reason is an event that occurred when Konaka confessed her love to Minato. Minato, unfortunately, did not feel the same way, and in her turbulent emotions, Konaka accidentally lost control of her powers and mortally wounded Minato. See, there was a point to me mentioning that in the previous video. Kagari, the Origami sisters, and the rest of their friends were absolutely horrified, not even giving Konaka a chance to explain herself in their shock and grief. Konaka eventually runs away. And that is what wraps up all the flashbacks in Shattered Reflection. Okay, now to the main story. Shattered Reflection begins after Hiyori and Kanami talk with the Origami sisters who are recovering in the hospital. Things turn absolutely upside down when Hiyori learns that she is pregnant again. As if her life wasn't miserable enough, she's not viewed positively amongst the public of Japan. She has stolen Noro, used her Aradama powers for evil, and slaughtered hundreds. Hiyori has practically committed high treason according to Toji law, a crime punishable by beheading. But Yukari and Akane are not willing to send Hiyori to the block. Instead, after a meeting with the five presidents, they strip Hiyori of her Toji position and place her under house arrest in the Heijo Institute, so that President Gojo can keep an eye on her. In a country of capital punishment, Hiyori knows that she's lucky, but this doesn't make her any less emotionally and mentally stressed. To make matters worse, Kanami and Hiyori, their friends, and the Akabane sword team learn on the news that Hiyori Hime has seized the Matsumoto castle and is beginning her siege on Japan. At the Special Sword Administration Bureau, they gather with the Origami sisters, Maki and Suzuka, and Director Manuwa. It is here that Hiyori Hime boastfully presents herself to them, along with Konaka and Kagari, who's now grown into a young teenager. Some of you may be asking how this happened. Allow me to explain. A week before this all happened, and right after she broke out of Hiyori's body, Hiyori Hime brought Konaka and baby Kagari to a lair in the netherworld where time moves way faster than time on Earth. This is how Kagari aged so quickly within a short span of time. But I'm getting sidetracked. Hiyori Hime kidnaps Kanami and offers Hiyori a chance to surrender herself, which her friends prevent her from complying. Hiyori, of course, wants to go save Kanami, but Yukari forbids her from doing so because of Hiyori's sanctions, and also probably because she's pregnant. Instead, Yukari places her under the care of the Akabane sword team. Maki and Suzuka, Kaoru, and Sayaka are sent to Matsumoto Castle to lead the troops in preventing Hiyori Hime's invasion. Mai and Ellen are ordered to remain in Kamakura to guard the Origami sisters in the elite guard's absence. But Hiyori is absolutely seething. She's an independent young woman who prefers doing things her own way. But she has no okatana and no aradama powers. She's literally powerless and can do nothing. It's not really her style. And so, Hiyori decides to go off on her own mission, save Kanami, and find a way to stop Hiyori Hime. She doesn't really have any other options. Nobody in Japan would be willing to help her, a common criminal, except for the Akabane sword team, who, despite their orders, agree to come with Hiyori, as their main duty is to protect her and her unborn child. But they all know that the Origami sisters' powers are limited and won't save Hiyori a second time from the block. Either they will defeat the greatest Aradama princess Japan has ever faced, or they'll all be dead. Hiyori and the Akabane sword team learn of a casket that can possibly seal Hiyori Hime away, the Shinigami casket. Remember that? However, it has apparently been stolen by a radical Toji group called the Sword Sisterhood, similar to the Myoga Tojis and the Tamayori Tojis. Their leader is this girl, Yamamoto Michiko, the cousin of Yume. The Akabane sword team and Hiyori manage to steal the casket and start heading towards Matsumoto. However, Konaka ambushes them through their journey midway. Along with the army of Tojis, Hiyori Hime has brainwashed and raised for war. The Akabane sword team hold them off so Hiyori can escape. But Hiyori instead gets captured by Yukari and some soldiers from the Special Ritual Riot Squad when they learned of her disappearance. Just as they are about to drag Hiyori off, Yukari is killed unexpectedly by Konaka, along with all the soldiers. Hiyori and the Akabane sword team manage to escape and drive away in the vehicle of the Special Ritual Riot Squad, all the way to Matsumoto. There they discover Matsumoto in complete destruction, with bodies everywhere. They also learn that Kamakura, along with other major cities, have been attacked. Akane, Director Manuwa, and thousands of others have been killed. Yui suggests that to avoid the Aradama in the streets and in the air, that they go underground through the sewers. But one of Hiyori Hime's pet Aradama crows spots them, and a flock of beasts are released into the sewer tunnels, killing Chie, Kyoka, and Kofuki. So at this point, quite a number of main characters on this chart are dead. Hiyori, Miria, Mihono make it to the Matsumoto castle, but are unfortunately captured. As it turns out, Hiyori Hime is trying to resurrect Tsukuyomi Hime and needs 4 specific ingredients: the blood of the strongest Toji, Konaka's okatana, the Shinigami casket, and Hiyori's unborn child. Kagari, however, is the only one who can activate the ritual, and she is the last descendant of Tsukuyomi Hime and a half Aradama. However, a big plot twist occurs. Konaka discovers in the Shinigami casket a letter of apology written by her sister and all her friends, never expressing their true love for her, and she realizes that her sister and her friends never hated her all along. Konaka sacrifices herself by smashing her okatana against Shitsuren, Hiyorihime's weapon. Shitsuren doesn't manage to break, however, but is now damaged enough that the force field around the Matsumoto castle shatters. President Takatsu and her troops of Tojis, who were waiting outside, assault the castle. But the situation is still very dangerous. Kagari duels with Hiyori in a fight to the death. Having been raised by Hiyori-hime, Kagari believes that Hiyori had no love for her from the start, and as a result abandoned her as a baby. Hiyori, being a loving mother, refuses to fight Kagari and kill her, showing Kagari which of her 2 mothers is the real one. Eventually, it is Hiyori and her alter ego alone that face each other, and it is in this moment when Hiyori realizes how she can truly stop Hiyori-hime, not by hating her, nor by acting out of vengeance, but through love. Hiyori-hime eventually accepts Hiyori as a part of herself, and vice versa, resulting in Hiyori-hime becoming a stable Aradama princess, and they merge together once more. In order to avoid arrest, Hiyori and Kagari are sent away to Ellen's home in America with Richard Friedman in his submarine. Kanami, wanting to be with Hiyori forever, goes with them. And it is later in their new home where Hiyori gives birth to her daughter, whom she names Konaka, honoring her aunt's sacrifice. Kanami eventually marries Hiyori in the end and adopts Hiyori's kids as her own. And this is the end of Shadow Reflection. Of course, there's a lot more that happens in the fanfic. These are just the main points, but I'm sure you wouldn't have wanted to hear me rambling on about everything for hours. In the meantime, I'm currently writing a new multi-chapter Toji No Miko fanfic called Bloody Crown, and it revolves around romance, palace intrigue, and wars that pit families against one another. And I will say that Bloody Crown involves a much more complex family tree. The first chapter will most likely be posted sometime next week. Again, I will put the links to my fanfiction profile in the description. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.